Usually it's not so difficult to find you before we do a record.
I know, I don't usually go places, but here we are. We're in this big crowd and we did find each other. This is a victory.
We are at the Elevate Festival. It's here in downtown Toronto, down the street from our studio at the Globe and Mail, but it's Canada's Technology and Innovation Festival.
A lot of heavy hitters here from the tech world, for the business world. I think people might be looking to network. Looking around this room, there's a lot of, name tags?
I think people are trying to understand
schmoozing.
whether or not we're important.
I'm definitely trying to pass as important. But you might have just undermined your importance by pulling out a tiny, tiny bag of sour keys.
Yes.
What is that?
I didn't know you would notice that, but that's just me getting a little bit of a sugar hit before the high of getting to speak to today's guest in person in a little tiny studio.
Amazing. Our guest today is a headliner of this festival. A lot of people are here to see her speak, and then you're going to get to see. Yeah, you're going to be talking to Erika Ayers Badan. She was the CEO of Barstool Sports, and Barstool Sports is kind of a controversial company.
Kind of a controversial company. It's kind of like a prototypical controversial media company, right? Kind of aggressive, say anything, misogynistic at times, kind of brash outlet.
Yeah, divisive, led by a controversial figure, Dave Portnoy. You might know him from his pizza reviews.
One Bite Pizza Reviews.
Or his kind of bro-y sports media empire that he built. So Erika Ayers Badan took that company to a $500 million exit, and then within the same year brokered a deal where Dave Portnoy bought it back for $1. It's really kind of an extraordinary business case.
It was a roller coaster. But earlier this year in the spring, just before she took on a new job at a food and lifestyle company called Food 52, she dropped a memoir. And it's a blend of memoir and kind of advice for the workplace called Nobody Cares About Your Career. I tried not to take it personally when I read it.
It wasn't directed at you.
Not me specifically. Yeah, so we're going to dive into a little bit about what it was like to work at both those places, reflections from the book to kind of chat about it with her.
I knew her from her podcast, Token CEO, which was really interesting because it was about her immersion as a woman into a very masculine culture at Barstool, how she navigated that, as well as lots of advice for just navigating the work world. And she's a pretty interesting figure.
Yeah, that was an amazing wink at how she was being criticized. Mm-hmm. By the way, if you're interested in sour keys, you can click my link and get some.
Oh, are you doing some affiliate?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, we like to maximize here at Lately. Okay, we better get you in there.
Let's go. This is Lately. Hi, Erika.
Hi, Vass.
Your book is called Nobody Cares About Your Career, Why Failure is Good.
The Great Ones Play Hurt.
The Great Ones Play Hurt, and Other Hard Truths. Mm-hmm. Was there a particular moment when you knew you had to do this project?
I don't know if I felt like I had to do it.
Okay. You really wanted to do it.
I wanted to do it. I wouldn't even say I really wanted to do it. I was curious. I was curious to see if I could write a book.
Okay.
I'd never written a book. I wrote, millions of emails. I like to write emails. I like an emotional email. But I was actually just curious if it was something that would be available to me. Mm-hmm. And when I started to go through the process and realized that it was, then it became exciting. And, it's kind of all the feels. Like it was exciting, and then it was very daunting, and then it was extremely overwhelming, and then it became really, really fun.
It's interesting that you say you like emotional emails too, because I think email has evolved to a place where we are very reserved and we're kind of communicating but not communicating enough. I like that too. I miss emails.
I love emails.
Like actual capital E emails.
Yes, 100%. Like a long email that's really, there's a lot of thought put into it. Yeah, it's hard. It's now when I send an email, I have to put it also in Slack, like the abbreviated version of it. And I'm like, oh, that sucks, because I was really rallying to something in an email.
You also convey something. I mean, I read the book, of course. I did my homework,
That's
which is
great.
also
Appreciate
advice
that
you offer. Has a lot of big picture thinking about ambition and the value of being uncomfortable and taking risks in your career. And one of the pieces that stuck with me that I found so charming was the kind of practical small scale tips. Mm-hmm. Like, you are a fan of the importance of thank you notes.
Yes.
And also interesting in a digital era, right? Why a thank you note?
I like a thank you note. I like handwritten notes in general, probably because I like emotional emails. And I just think the idea of conveying to someone else that they have made you feel something and you have some semblance of gratitude for that is becoming a little bit of a lost art. The other reason I really like thank you notes is it's a immediate way to see if somebody cares about a job or not.
Right.
So, I'll give you an example. I was looking for a head of corp dev, and there was this Harvard MBA candidate that I was really interested in. And she seemed like she was interested in it too. And we went through the interview process. And then she kind of went radio silent. And I was like, did she actually send a thank you note? And I went and searched my inbox to see if she sent one. And she hadn't. And to me, it actually was a very good sign of like, ooh, this girl actually doesn't care about this gig that much.
Reading the book now, knowing a little bit about your career trajectory of the past year in particular, there seemed to be an element where through the book, things are unspooling almost in real time, maybe in your mind, right? On the page, you're speaking to this hypothetical reader / or directly to me specifically about being fearless in your career, about making big changes, not getting complacent or not allowing yourself to stay that way. And it did occur to me that you seem to be following exactly that advice at the very same time in your own life. When you left Barstool, a company which you grew significantly to over 500 million when you left?
Yeah, we sold it for 550 million.
The value for a new gig in a different sector at Food 52, taking a big swing yourself. Is that a fair interpretation?
Definitely.
Did you know you were writing to yourself?
I think the whole book is written to me. It's really a love letter to work. It's really my love letter to a career that has, changed my life in really good ways and not great ways and ways I never would have expected and in ways that are incredible. And I never, ever, ever thought that I would be in places like this room. So I'm very...
This room is not very glamorous, by the way.
Is.
So
It's
maybe that's
deal.
Why you didn't think about it. We're just in the corner of the Meridian Hall.
No, I'm happy to be here.
Okay.
I was writing the third section of the book, which is do you stay or do you go? And I did have a moment as I'm writing that, and I'm like, Erika, you're not taking your own advice. And, I was kind of calling bullshit on myself because I'm writing about when is it time to go? It's time to go when nothing scares you. When is it time to go? It's time to go when you've done it all before and nothing excites you. And I had loved this thing called Barstool so much, and we had grown it to be so big and we had taken it so far that I really felt I didn't want to overstay my welcome and I didn't want to diminish what I had contributed. But as I was writing that, I did have the okay, well, now you're going to have to go do something about it. So you are right.
That's really cool. Very Gwen Stefani, What You Waiting For, which is, I think, an underrated song of hers. It's what I listen to when I know I have to make a decision.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Let's talk a little bit more about Barstool, and then we're going to get to Food 52.
Okay.
I want to talk about how you arrived there. So you do tell us in the book, and you're so honest, right, about really wanting the role and just pounding that pavement, working your contacts, how you beat out 70 or 75 dudes in light blue tops, and friends and family had sort of whispered or maybe cautioned you not to do it, that the place is volatile, untested. We know you loved it, but was there ever a moment in those early days where you thought, oh, they were right?
Oh, yeah.
This is a little bit bonkers.
There was 1,000. I knew in my heart and in my gut that job was supposed to be mine. Not to be cheesy and, I'm pretty pragmatic and very regulated, but I did know that someone was going to take my dream if someone took that job. So I really didn't care what anybody had to say about taking it. But I can remember my first day on the job. I took the job and we had a show called The Rundown, and they were doing it from Dave's apartment. And they had a guest from Boston on it, a news person from Boston. And they decided for some reason to do the show live. And the news lady dropped a bunch of racial slurs. And it got picked up by all the Boston affiliates, and it got picked up in the news, and she got fired. And I remember that was my first day. And I was like, holy shit, this thing is alive. I didn't even have eyes for it. I wasn't used to Twitter in the way I can see Twitter now or X now.
Yeah.
And it was a very big, like, this thing is going to be intense.
Well, I was also wondering about the intensity of that first day. I feel like in an older or more traditional workplace, you stride into a physical office, right? And maybe someone sees you talking to someone else there.
There's like an HR person.
Yeah, or there's like a big all hands. But what's your first move when you're maybe having to send people an email, or kind of you get Erika's being added to the Slack and people are looking at you like, how do you establish yourself?
One, they didn't have Slack, and they also didn't have an email. So we made both. Yeah, we made both.
It was like a text message
They
company?
had GChat. But I do think coming into a new job is tough, no matter what the circumstances. I came into crazy circumstances. I've just taken a new job, and how you enter a new job, I think, is really important. I entered this job with a survey. I was like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just send a survey and ask everyone for their like unadulterated opinion about what you don't like about this place and what you do like about it, and what would you start, stop, and continue. But I think that is a little bit it, which is you have to read the room. I wish people were better at reading the room at work and just listening and watching what's happening, and just being a good listener, like earnestly squaring up to people and being like, hey, I'm Erika. What's your name? And what do you do? And tell me about it. And I think that's honestly the best thing you can do when you get into a new job.
When you joined, there were some repercussions. You write in your book, you got cut from a couple of boards, professional associations, because of Barstool's reputation, the company's association with a very controversial founder. What was it like to feel that fallout? How did you respond?
It hurt. Like it was painful. I felt confused by it. I was on 2 boards. It was the first time I'd been on any boards. I think the first time you go into things, you worry it's the last time. You know, now I sit on boards that I'm incredibly proud to be on and make those boards look like irrelevant, lame boards, which whatever. But I felt ashamed a little bit. I felt like I had done something wrong, like a good girl gone bad a little bit. I felt a little bit like that. And then I also felt righteous. One of the boards was the Abortion Rights League. And I was like, ladies, if we want reproductive rights to really cross the transom, it'd be good to get guys involved. And it woke me up to, you can create change as a woman from the inside or from the outside. And the prettier, more appropriate version is from the outside. And I am a choose the worst path kind of person. The path was going to be from the inside. So it was painful. It made me mad, but it also gave me a lot to prove. And it made it so that I was deeply committed to making this thing a success. Like I used it as very deep motivation.
How would you describe leading the company through its evolution? How did you kind of balance the lightning in a bottle feeling, that messy magic, with pressures to become more, I'll use the M word, of mainstream?
It was exhilarating. It was addictive. And one of the reasons I left is I was a little bit worried for myself that I wouldn't be able to work in a place without a rush. And I was like, that's not really healthy. Like that's very hard to sustain for 10 years, let alone beyond 10 years. But the second piece of it was, in the beginning, it was stressful. We didn't have anything. I was trying to build an office. I was trying to figure out who worked there. I was trying to build a P&L. I was trying to hire people by the minute. Like it was very intense. And that required a lot of time. It was my first time being a CEO. I was the CEO in this crazy company with a very, high personality founder. And it was a lot of just like getting your bearings. Like I spent a lot of time getting my bearings. And then what happened is we started to grow and we started to grow and we started to grow. And then it really became about change. It was always about change, constantly assessing, where are we? What's the risk? What's the opportunity? Do we have the right people? Are these people doing the right things? Over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that's how I spent a decade.
I wondered what it's like when a deal of that magnitude goes through. Not just the where you are, but like what's happening there. What do you do that night? What's the scene? Like what's
like
the cinema?
Selling a company?
Yeah, of like getting to the finish line too.
Oh, it's so anticlimactic. It's amazing. I love a deal. Chasing a deal is exhilarating. It's really fun to make a deal. This was my first time selling a company, and I found it to be very emotional. You know, it's exciting. You're going to make a lot of money. You're going to make your investors happy. You've hit the end line or the end zone. And then there's just kind of like a little bit of an empty feeling, oh gosh. And in our case, the first part of the acquisition was a minority stake investment. So for us, it was just a new gauntlet. It wasn't, hey, you're done. You can go right off into the sunset. And now there's going to be a 3-year period where you have to be on very good behavior. So I do think when you have a moment of great success, you put on a great event, you get a great deal done, you make something happen. Those are the moments for me where I'm the most uncomfortable and the most nervous because, one, I'm a harsh judge of myself and just a harsh judge in general where I'm like, oh, I could have done this better or this could have done differently. And then the second is like, you just get this little panic of like, oh God, is something bad going to happen? You know, so...
Okay, I want to jump in for a second because this deal is actually kind of complex. Here's what happened. A gaming company called Penn Entertainment fully acquired Barstool for just over $550 million USD in 2023. And then, just a few months later, Dave Portnoy bought his company back. Penn sold 100% of outstanding Barstool shares back to Portnoy for $1. Why did they do this? Well, on Twitter/X, Portnoy told his stoolies that it's tough for a company to operate in a highly regulated gambling space, especially a company with the kind of reputation that Barstool had. Penn Entertainment expects to lose $800 million on the sale, but if Portnoy sells Barstool again, Penn does have the right to receive half of the proceeds. Back to it.
What did it feel like to see that happening?
That was climactic.
Yeah.
And awesome.
Okay.
We sold the company twice in 2023 when we sold it to Dave for $1. You know, for me personally, it felt very good because it was full circle. It was truly such a neat, tied up in a bow 360 of like, I came here, he just sold it, we grew it, we sold it, and we now got it back for him. And it was really, for me, it was a really huge relief. It was just completion.
I want to talk about the company you're with now.
Yes.
And I have to ask, just before I get there, like, is there a founder equivalent of almost always being known by that first band you were with, right? Like, no one thinks of Wings when they think of Paul McCartney. And I'm just very cognizant that it took me this long in the interview to finally get to 100%. Food 52. But do you feel like that's what it'll be like for you? Like, it's kind of always a Barstool forever?
It's a little awkward for me because I don't want to be like the girlfriend that like just talks about the old boyfriend all the time. You know what I mean? So like, I am sensitive to it. I really loved Barstool. I spent, almost a decade there, and it's an extraordinary story. So I also understand why people are interested in it. Mm-hmm. I will probably always be known for that. Even if Food 52 is fantastically successful, and I'm really hell-bent and
sells for
really
$501 million.
$501 million. It will not be the same. Okay. Because Barstool was such a long shot. Mm-hmm. It was so impossible. What we made happen was just not supposed to happen.
Well, let's talk about maybe how it's not the same and maybe how it is.
Yeah.
Because on the surface, you've landed at what seems like a very different company, contrasting maybe more masculine, sporty, and domestic and Food 52. Are these companies really so different? They both are relying on a mix of advertising and direct commerce for income with different audiences.
I think the companies are very, very different. Now, should they be so different? I would argue no. And will they be so different in a year or 2 years from now? I would say definitely not.
Okay.
But today they are very different. Food 52 was, created by two women who are very soft-spoken. They're writers. They are chefs and cooks, and it's a solitary act. It's not a bombastic act. It's a art that is in service of other people and nourishing. And Barstool is about like, hey, get as many eyeballs as you can, be as crazy as you want. So the DNA is very different. The other big difference for me in the job I'm in is when I got to Barstool, there was nothing there, beyond great content. And I got to build everything exactly as I felt it should be built. At Food 52, I'm dealing with scaffolding that's been built by 3 execs behind me.
Yeah.
And that's a really different, it's an exercise in patience for me. Like I am being tried in this job because it is, I can't just go, like take it all down and start it all up again. It doesn't work that way. And I also don't have the eyes that I need to be able to do that. So I think the two companies today are very different. I think in the future, maybe not so much.
Okay. Even though you're heading up a food company, you have said, you don't really cook that much. Neither do I. So you're learning. That's a very vulnerable place to be. We can see you on Instagram learning how to make almond chicken.
Yeah.
Thank you for that tip. It feels like you're, actively branding yourself, building out your personality. And you did this at Barstool as well through the Token CEO podcast and other ways. What is it like to be platformed in that way? Do you have to protect parts of yourself? What don't you show?
I don't think I'm great at content. I do find myself, though, oddly making a lot of it. And, I took this crazy job in 2016. I was not a known entity. I was not public. I am very private. You never see my family on social anywhere. You don't really see what's in my head anywhere. But I did learn a great deal at Barstool, and I also became way more comfortable with the story behind the story, which is the story of how we were building the company. And what I also saw was that showing that story is what helped make people love that company. That was Dave Portnoy's idea. Like that was always his vision. But I really see it at Food 52, which is, Amanda Hesser, the founder, is public. She writes a newsletter. She will make content, but there's not a lot of content creators in the same vein as I had in my last gig. And I want to dog food it. So I'm like, let me show you how I would do it. And let's find more talented, more creative, better people to do it. And so, food is the 3rd biggest category on TikTok. And it's not brands or companies. It's not Condé Nast. It's individuals who are making captivating content.
Let's talk about dog fooding it. Because when you arrived in the spring, Food 52 was reportedly struggling. Business of Home wrote that there had been some layoffs. There was a short-lived CEO previously. People maybe were pivoting away from online shopping. You went into Barstool kind of with an ascent at the start of it. And from here, it looks like you're leading Food 52 to forestall a descent.
Yep.
How does leading and meeting in maybe a darker moment in a company's cycle change how you lead, if at all?
Awesome question. When I got to Food 52, the company was very fragile and the morale was fairly terrible. And the team there had been through a lot. And you talk about peacetime CEOs and wartime CEOs. I'm a wartime CEO. Barstool was a different type of war. To your point, we were on the right side of every trend imaginable, but it was a war. Food 52 is a war because the company got lost. Like it really got lost. One of the first things I did was cut 50% of the SKUs. So I cut something like 6,000 SKUs.
And a SKU is like the barcodes, like items
how many
that you sell.
items?
How many items?
We cut 6,000 items. And it wasn't a popular decision, right? And everyone said, if you cut all the SKUs, you're going to lose all the revenue. And I'm like, but that makes no sense. Let's just sell more of fewer SKUs, which is not a retail mindset. And it's certainly not a mass retail mindset. So, for me personally, I think I am meeting a company in a descent is a very interesting experience. We'll see if there's a book that comes out, at the end of this one, but it's a way harder challenge.
Well, I know you did your homework before you took the job, and you would have come across a little bit of some of what I saw online, some negative Glassdoor reviews.
I mean, the Glassdoor is like a dumpster fire.
I know. People chirping on Reddit.
Yeah.
How does accountability and owning failure connect with this kind of noise of anonymous people trashing the firm? Like, how do you how do you start to acknowledge that stuff, but also focused on what you're doing? Where is it in the mix, basically?
Yeah, Glassdoor I do care about. The Reddit, not so much. I love Reddit. I think Redditors are special creatures and they have a lot of opinion. And you know what? They're not wrong. It's hurtful, certainly, and nasty, definitely. But the Reddit stuff I don't don't spend any time with, because if I learned this at Barstool and even before in my career, which is if you spend all your time listening to what everybody has to say about how you suck, like then you're pretty soon going to just start realizing you suck. And the reality is everybody sucks. So you might as well just make the most of what you have and who you are and what you've got and try to build something. The Glassdoor I do care about, because I think the Glassdoor is really from people who have worked there. And I'm sensitive to the Glassdoor. If someone listening to this knows how to turn your Glassdoor around, like I'm all ears, but I'm sensitive to the Glassdoor because I don't think people should feel like they felt at Food 52. And I want to not have a culture like that. And that is a signal that I do think is really important.
In your dedication to the book,
yes,
you write to your husband, you gave me a world bigger than work. And your book is about achieving the heights of professional success. How did you get to a place where you recognized or let yourself embrace the value in that world beyond work too?
Yeah, it's hard for me. And I came to it really late, I would say. And, if I were to give people advice, which is I was chasing something for so long, I was chasing a hole. And I really filled it up through work. I can remember being in high school and feeling a little socially awkward or feeling, left out in the friend drama or this and that, and I would escape to work. Having a work to go to meant that I could not have to deal with other problems in my life. I found a beautiful escape in work, and I found amazing fulfillment from being able to do. And I think that was a really good survival technique for me, but I also think it's really dangerous, and it kind of numbs you to a lot of other things that you should be paying attention to in your life. And realizing that there's this whole world beyond work and that you can be something outside of work and that you don't need work to be whole is an incredible gift that is new to me, and I'm like loving that. And I wish that for everybody.
I want to end with something else that I think you love.
Okay.
And that's LL Bean.
I love LL Bean.
I noticed this. When I was reading the book, I was like, there's something here. It's only 3 mentions, but the tote bag,
the boots,
duck boots were mentioned. I don't think you're wearing any now. But it was making me feel like, okay, this is some of the visual. This is, something about Erika here. You seem to be going one step further with Food 52, like going beyond affiliate links and merch and kind of using the publication with social commerce that's more vertically integrated.
Yep.
Do you see this as the future of media, more of a marketplace ecosystem?
I think marketplaces are here to stay. I think when you look at, like right now, I'm obsessed with Chinese commerce. I think it's wild. I think TikTok is going to be micro QVC done in a crazy, new, fresh way. And you can transact instantly on the platform. That's coming. I think in terms of Food 52, Food 52 is going to be about storytelling and community and the stories of designers and makers and merchants. So I think we will be a little bit slow cooked compared to most marketplaces are fast. We have a marketplace that's slow and homemade and handmade. But I do think a marketplace is the future. In the same way, the present and future of commerce for media companies is affiliate, which is really a marketplace. I do think commerce will be storytelling and then a cut of whatever product you're telling the story about.
Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
You've been listening to Lately, a Globe and Mail podcast. Our executive producer is Katrina Onstad. The show is produced by Jay Coburn, and our sound designer is Cameron McIver. And I'm your host, Vass Bednar. In our show notes, you can subscribe to the Lately newsletter. That's where we unpack just a little more of the latest in business and technology. A new episode of Lately comes out every Friday, wherever you get your podcasts.